What's up, comic book fans? And welcome to Comics Icons. Now, JJ, what they call me. And today, we got more Fall of the House of X by way of the story that many of us have been dying waiting for. The resurrection of Magneto. And yo, this story right here, oh my God. Fire feels like an understatement. So this is the first issue of a new 4-part miniseries to bring back the one and only master of magnetism for this fight for mutant kind. Now, in case you're wondering where Magneto has been all this time, it was back in the Avengers vs. X-Men vs. Eternals event, specifically in X-Men Red number 7, when Uranos, the grandfather of the Mad Titan Thanos, was unleashed on Arakko. And before Magneto died, he told Storm not to resurrect him. And he also didn't have a Krakoan backup. So if you guys are wondering how Magneto comes back without a backup or the 5, or you're just ready to have the king put his crown back on, then you know what time it is. Let's get it. So when this issue kicks off, we see Magneto in the afterlife, standing by what looks to be a lava flow. And at his feet are 5 of his helmets. And he says the words, "Aurora, I was wrong." And then we see Aurora, aka Storm, who pretty violently wakes up from this dream screaming, "No!" And then lightning crackles in her bedroom, shattering a window. So then we see the guy that she's in bed with, named Craig, who is able to calm her back down. And then we see 2 kids run in, ready for war because they're on Arakko, which is full of warriors, and they just got over one war. So these kids assume that it's on again. So when Craig tells the kids that it was just a nightmare, they're like, "Aw, cute little psychos, aren't they?" But as Craig and Aurora go back to bed, he asks her if the dream was about the big push against Orchis, and she tells them that it was something else. And as they fade back to sleep, we see her thinking that it's time to die. So then we transition over to the Defenders HQ with Adam Brashear, aka the Blue Marvel, who I think the MCU should have put in the Marvels movie, but that's a whole nother story. But Brashear is there along with Taya, not 100% sure on how to pronounce her name, but we see them together as the intruder alert goes off, and then we see Storm appear telling Brashear, "I have a long journey to make through parts unknown, and you've been my travel agent before." Now Taya, she doesn't know who this is, so she's ready to fight off this supposed intruder. But Brashear tells her to calm down because he gave her access, and she's on our side. Plus, to be honest with y'all, I'm not so sure that this chick wants any of that smoke, because I don't know how much you guys have been paying attention to Storm lately, but she's been an absolute beast. But Brashear reaffirms to Storm that he's got the mutants back against Orchis, but they are highly organized, tactically, politically, technologically, and even magically. Smashing their network will take equal organization, superior tactics, and luck. But it's vital that non-mutants have mutants' backs right now. Then Storm tells them that she's in need of a favor. So then she tells him what she needs, and she actually expects for him to refuse, but he doesn't. He nods to her like it's nothing, and then he takes her to a portal room. Then she tells Brashear that he seems a little bit nonchalant, and she asks him if he really understands what it is that she's asking for. And he tells her, "You need a door into the waiting room, the lineal space between life and death that Wanda Maximoff created for mutant souls." Then he tells her that he's sure Dr. Strange or Reed Richards would tell her that hacking the afterlife like that is impossible. But the impossible is where he likes to start. So Brashear starts to get the portal ready for her, and the portal door begins to open. Then he begins to tell her now he needs to check the safety readings. But Storm thinks to herself that she's been here before, and there is no safety, only the leap. And without haste, she straight up jumps through the portal while Brashear is screaming for her not to. Then we see her on the other side, the afterlife waiting room. And the first person she's greeted by is Tarn the Uncaring. Now Tarn is what's called a genomic mage. and he has the power to change the DNA structure of others, but he was killed by Magneto back in the X of Swords or Ten of Swords event when Magneto killed him in one of the dopest ways possible. So Magneto knew that Tarn's powers were psychokinetic in nature, so Magneto placed his helmet on top of Tarn's head so he couldn't use those powers. Then he straight up crushed the helmet while it was on Tarn's head. Straight like that. So yeah, if we get Magneto back in this fight with Orchis, it's going down. So Storm asks Tarn, where are the other mutants? Why is it empty? And then he tells her that these symbols form exits and entrances. Maybe the other souls just didn't want to wait around, and how could this be paradise if they couldn't leave? But then Tarn asks Storm who it is that she came for, and she thinks to herself that she could lie, but Tarn doesn't deserve a lie. So she tells him that she's here for Magneto, Tarn's killer. And as expected, he takes this as a direct insult, a slap in the face, and now it's on. He restructures his DNA to turn into this giant monster with teeth all around his body. Pretty terrifying stuff. Then he says to Storm, I wonder, Aurora, when I consume your spirit, will you die a second death? Or perhaps some part of you will remain as part of me, and I will listen to your screams forever. But Storm, she's not worried at all, and she asks him why he doesn't just twist her genetics like he's done before. What's stopping you? So Tarn tells her that it's only his desire to prolong her agony. But Storm calls him out on his lies because she knows that the only mutant he can twist is himself. Then she calls him a self-created monster. So then he tells her that what she calls monstrosity, he calls the new frontier of being. Then he asks, what are you, Storm? In the face of this, what can you ever be? Raw material for my design? An Omega level morsel? So now y'all check this out. This is how badass Storm is these days. And she tells him, you keep talking, Tarn, as if you can talk me out of seeing the ground under my feet. Who am I? I am a witch of the weather, named for the storm. And you are standing on a cloud. Then she calls down the lightning and completely obliterates Tarn. Sheesh. I told y'all, Storm ain't no joke these days. Then Storm thinks to herself that magic is a symbol and a signifier. If the waiting room was carved from the seed of magic, as Tarn claimed, then we must be careful which signifiers we step on. That's if Tarn spoke the truth. And then Storm is met with an ancient Egyptian ancestor of hers named Ashaki, who then responds to Storm's thoughts and says to her regarding Tarn, such men always hoard their knowledge to profit themselves. But nor did he lie. Your friend built a paradise for magic, and this is the garden where magic grows. Then she tells Storm to walk with her and learn. Then she asks Storm why she's there, and Storm thinks to herself that Ashaki has done much for me and mine. It feels foolish to tell her that I threw myself into the unknown on the strength of a dream. But Ashaki can hear her thoughts, so she replies that dreams are vital, little Ro. They are messages from the gods, even sometimes from eternity, the great all, and carry meaning beyond meaning. Dreams are binding. So then Storm tells her that she dreamt of Max, Magneto. He was standing on a strange shore, readying himself to enter a ruined city. His face turned away, but in torment. It was more than a dream. It was a distress call. And then Ashaki tells her that detail is important. We're in a place where magic lives. Symbols and metaphors are the true reality. Anything that you can recall may point the way. So Storm mentions that his helmet was at his feet, and there were 5 helmets, but she doesn't know why 5. So then Ashaki tells her that 5 is the number of magic, but it also has other associations. The 5th sphere is the sphere of judgment. No mercy is found there. I must ask, was this man truly your friend? Then we see Storm recalling past events with Magneto, detailing both his and her history together, including one where he nearly killed Kitty Pryde, which comes from a story back in 1981 by Chris Claremont. Then she says that he was many things. He's owed many things. If he is suffering, I have to try. Then Storm asks Ashaki what became of the souls that were there in the waiting room. And then she responds to her, Would you wait forever? I do not know where they are. I only know which path they took. Then she points over in the direction of Mistress Death and says, her road. To which Storm responds, then they are gone? Forever? With no hope of return? But Ashaki tells her that there's always hope. They crossed one threshold already, and death is not the barrier that many believe. By your reckoning, I died thousands of years ago, yet here I am. And you can still return from this if you do not tarry. As she then shows Storm back on the other side of the portal that her body is still there with Adam Brashear, who is thinking the worst and he's trying to revive her, which this I found to be some pretty cool imagery, that it was her spirit that leapt through the portal, but her body still remains. But then Storm tells her that that changes nothing, that she came to help a friend and comrade find the mercy that is being withheld from him, or if he wishes, to bring him back to the fight. And if I must, then Ashaki finishes her statement saying that you'll bring back every dead mutant with him? Oh, Aurora, there are forces to which even a goddess must bow. Still, you are an avatar of life. Even here in the lands after, you were allowed here for a reason. Then she shows Storm a card with 5 swords on it and tells her that swords are sacred to Ma'at, the great goddess of balance. But 5 is judgment's number. A conflict is coming. One way or another, the balance will not hold. Then she tells Storm that darkness must be fought in many ways, on many levels, above and below. And the one you call Magneto holds the key. So then Storm asks Ashaki, how does she reach him? So she tells Storm that from here, the only way is via the tower. It is the way he went. A good sign if he's not ready for death's road or the turn of the wheel. And as Storm looks at this tower, to her it seems far away, but just as she thinks it, she appears inside of the tower and she's already climbing the staircase. And then in that moment, the ground beneath Storm begins to shatter and she starts to fall. And now she's wondering if this is what Magneto went through. Then as she's falling, she finds herself in a place where she's met with a Dominion. And here it gets interesting, as this Dominion tells Storm that she is linear, they are not. You are single-minded, morsel, atom, but not big enough. More information density required for resource growth into consumable. So, ask. And what they mean here is that the Dominions consume the most knowledgeable beings into themselves, but Storm doesn't yet have enough knowledge for them to find appetizing. So they tell her to ask questions, which is kind of a double-edged sword. If she asks questions, she'll get the answers that she requires, but at the same time, it'll make them want to consume her. So the first question she asks is, where am I? And the Dominion responds, beyond, outside, mystery subsection, designated, overspace. Then tells her that it's a meeting space for cosmic intellects, higher thought forms, accessible via singularity, negative zones, that this is the junction to everywhere. So then Storm asks, are there others like you? Then his Dominion responds that various exist, work, consume, and grow as Dominions exist, work, consume, and grow. But one threatens infinite power with human-level thought. Threat potential, infinite. Threat duration, forever. Omegas and Beyonders were and are afraid. They are linear, we are not. As then they show her the Beyonders and say containment attempted and multiverses reboot attempted, but it was not enough. Then we see the Ace of Crowns for Enigma, to which this Dominion says, you are linear, he is not. But Storm, she isn't a dummy, and she knows that with each piece of information she gathers, that she becomes more and more of a tasty meal. So she's thinking to herself now, ask your third question, make your third wish, and pray the genie's granted without asking their price. So then she says that she's looking for the soul of Max Eisenhart, Magneto. And then they recall him, saying that he is a rare atom, that they looked at him and cataloged his pain, that they studied him and then sent him on. He was not viable or useful enough for consumption. But now Storm has gotten fattened up with knowledge, and they tell her that she is of greater interest now, worthy, useful, and consumable. But Storm, she refuses, and she tells them, consume this. And then she straight up blasts this Dominion with lightning. That's right, she blasts the Dominion with lightning. Badassery. Then we see Storm start to fall again. Then we see her thinking, did Magneto go through this? This pain of knowledge, this spiritual vivisection. His life flipped through like a book. Mutant, leader, queen, Omega, goddess. So many layers that I have discovered in myself, each one waiting beneath the next. As we see the past versions of Storm since the beginning, some nice retro looks, especially that silver look, if you remember the old X-Men cartoons, and hopefully in the upcoming X-Men 97 if they actually hurry up and drop it. But then we see Storm hit the ground, and then when she gets up, we see that she's in fact in the same place that Magneto was in her dream, and we see 5 of her headpieces on the ground at her feet. Then she says to herself that she came here for Max because he was my friend, because he is in pain. But this is not a place anyone can simply visit. Behold the river. Behold the broken city. Behold judgment. Whatever this place has already done to Magneto, it will do worse to me. As we then see Magneto is in this pit of lava with blood pouring down from his eyes. And ladies and gentlemen, that's the end of the issue. Man, y'all, I hope you guys like this issue. So far, I'm loving it myself. This Resurrection of Magneto series is off to a dope start, and it looks as if we're in for one hell of a ride. Writer Al Ewing, he's in his bag right now with this one, and I can't wait to see what he's got next for us. I love how he writes Storm as just this completely badass warrior goddess afraid of nothing. And the artwork here was pretty dope too, especially when we saw Tarn the Uncaring in full monster mode. That was pretty sick. But you guys let me know in the comments what you thought about this issue, and if you're ready for this ride. And if you like this video and this channel, then please help a brother out and drop a like, share, and subscribe to Comics Icons for more icons in the comic book world. What's up, comic book fans, and welcome to Comics Icons. Now, JJ what they call me, and today we got more from the fall of the House of X, this time with issue number 2 of Resurrection of Magneto. And ladies and gentlemen, this issue is fire. And the Master of Magnetism is going to be ready for action. But by the end of this, they'll be met with an even bigger hurdle than what lays before them right now. And if you need to get caught up with how we got here, then I'll place a card up top to the last video on issue number 1, as well as a link to the complete playlist at the end of this video. But if you guys are ready to find out how the Master of Magnetism makes his way back into the fight, then you know what time it is. Let's get it. So we start this issue off with a memory of Magneto's, one where he and Namor are deep in the ocean and playing a game of choices against the Sea Witch. And this adventure, Magneto says, is payment for a small plot of land from Namor. Now, Namor had chosen incorrectly, which is why he's now being suffocated by this sea creature. But Magneto, he chose correctly, so he's given a key. Then he tells the witch that he's gonna need for her to release Namor. And she really doesn't want to, but he reminds her that he did win her game, and he made a promise to Namor of keeping him safe. So she releases Namor, and then she tells him to thank Magneto for his freedom. But Magneto could care less about his thanks. He's giving him an island, so that's thanks enough. But this key that she gave him is more intriguing at the moment, and when he asks what it does, she tells him it remains with you. Once you have it, you can never lose it, even in death, until the day it is turned. All the same, keep guard of it, for it is the key to the door of judgment and purification. And Magneto notes that he never did use that key, and it's placed in his pocket and it was never touched again. But he can still feel its metal, so he knows it's still with him. Then we transition to now, and he's thinking to himself that he is in the place of judgment now, but he has still not turned that key. And no matter what, he has no plans to. Because even though he can use it to leave this place, he feels the need to atone for all the lives he's destroyed, and he won't compromise that just because he feels some discomfort. As he lingers on all of the names of those people, and we see that his vision is gone and his face covered in tears of blood, he's approached by Storm, who, even before saying a word, summons the snow to cool the air. And although for Magneto, this is a welcome gesture, he still wants Storm to leave him be. But she cannot leave because, as she says, he called out to her. And when her friends call out to her, she has no choice but to come help. Then he recalls the name Christopher Bach, a mutant hater with a scheme to make people afraid of me, as if they weren't already. Many died. I've counted their names. In the end, I dropped a few tons of rubble on him and his followers. And when Cyclops asked what became of him, I lied. Said I didn't know. I regret the lie. But then Storm notices that there are thousands of names on this wall alone, and dozens of walls in this city of judgment. And she asks if all these names died by Magneto's hand, to which Magneto tells her that either by his hand or in his name, by action or inaction, by intent or by accident. Those I regret, those I don't. They all count. And according to Magneto, they all should be counted. He's been there for some time and has read almost every name by choice in order to acknowledge his full weight on the world, the blood that he's accepted. And this is why he feels he has not done enough to return to the world. So Storm lets him know that she's there because she felt his pain. But he tells Storm that if he is in pain, then it's his pain, his life. And who else would judge how he's lived if he does not? And then he again asks Storm to leave before he adds another name to the wall. So of course Storm asks Magneto if that was a threat, but he lets her know that he's trying to protect the life she still has. His life is over, and the cost is all but counted. So he's done with life and done with her. And he's done with the world, he says, as he hurls his suit in her direction. Then she lets him know that the world is not yet done with them. But if this is truly what he wants, then she's sorry. Then Magneto goes on to tell Storm that even as the so-called hero of Krakoa, he was already a broken man. As he then recalls moments and decisions in Krakoa that were wrong choices, like enforcing unenforceable laws and condemning Victor Creed and others to exile in the pit. But Storm reassures him that he's not the only one who's made mistakes, as she herself built her own pit on Araco. But this is still not enough to appease Magneto, who then recalls back to Toad, as he tells Storm that Toad was the scapegoat for Wanda's murder, that Toad still loved Wanda, but followed Magneto, and now Magneto must judge himself, because he's been the judge for so many. So now he asks Storm if she can still feel his pain, and if she still wants him to come back. But her response now is that she'd like to speak to Wanda. But this gets a reaction from Magneto, who doesn't want Storm to put this on Wanda, since this is all his fault. He was the one that set things into motion, and all Wanda could do was risk the existence of the waiting room. And thousands are alive from Wanda's work and Toad's sacrifice. But now Storm starts to get frustrated and compares him to Charles, saying that he is closer to Charles than he'd care to admit. You use your people for your ends. Play the martyr when it doesn't work out. And when your decisions destroy you, you wallow instead of... But Magneto interrupts her. Wait, did something happen to Charles? That one caught his attention. But she goes on to tell him that something happened to all of them. Then she tells him everything. How Orcus finally came for them. how Charles was offered his choice and martyred them all just as he predicted. And now Magneto starts to get angry because he told Storm to watch over Charles. And now as Magneto's rage begins to build, he thinks to himself that he came here willingly. He climbed the tower. He stood in the gaze of dominions as he was judge, so he undertook his own judgment. But how quickly he forgot that. How easily he's become the stern judge again, and he begins to hurl the names from the wall at Storm. Since he's etched these names, they're his to tear down, and the task his to abandon. So he reaches for a name. Sharon Friedlander, an ally of mutant kind, killed by Frenzy because she thought it was what Magneto wanted. And he hurls that name and reaches for another. Ilya Popov, a 19-year-old that made his first voyage on the Leningrad when it attacked Magneto, and he sent it to the seafloor. Then he hurls that name at her and grabs another. Faina Morose, a witness at the back of the crowd when Magneto's daughter Anya died. She froze in fear, wept, felt helpless. Then a tide of magnetic force took her life. Then again, he hurls the name at Storm. Then he reaches for another name. But this time, the name is his own. He cannot forgive himself. Then he immediately thinks of Charles, who he begins to call out to. Because Charles saw in him what counted, what he could not see in himself. Then he cries out, "What did I do, Charles? I could have stayed. Given Krakoa a chance. Tried to make it better. Make myself better. Reach further. Do more. Ensure our garden grew in kinder hands. But I had endured too much. Lost too much. My failures were too great. I could not believe. So I chose death over the dream I built with my friend." And as he once again starts to go back into feeling sorry for himself, Storm approaches him and tells him that there's something that he needs to see. And then she places her hands on top of his eyes. And when she removes them, the bloody tears are gone and his eyes have returned. Then he looks to the wall again and notes that here, all I am is counted. The walls are gleaming marble, and on the marble, there are names etched by my hand or in my name, by action or inaction, by intent or even accident. Even those I regret, they are all there. The names of everyone whose life I ever saved. But Magneto doesn't want to look at them, as he thinks to himself that even if they outnumber the dead 1,000 to 1, there are too few. And yet one is too many. Too many to ever turn my back. And so many are hated. So many are feared. Then he finally reaches for that key and continues to think. Forgive me, Charles. I was wrong. We both were. But it's not too late. I swear to you, it's not too late. Hold on, old friend. I'm on my way. As he looks at this mysterious key, and he extends his arm to what he thinks will be resurrection, and he unlocks what he thinks will be a door out. But instead, a door opens up beneath them, and they begin to fall. And now in this new place, they're lost, and neither of them have any clue where they are now. But it's pitch black and very cold. And then there's a voice that begins to laugh and says, "Look at you both, the weather witch, restless and rootless as the breeze. Have you found a new home now? Found joy? Found community? You will turn your back on it, Aurora Monroe, as you turn your back on everything you love, save for the ex that doesn't love you back. And you, the wounded king who abandoned the world but won't let it go on without him. Do you really think you can lay your own ghost to rest, Max? Or is it Eric? Or Magnus? Can you shed your crimes as simply as you shed your many names?" And then we see that it's the Shadow King before them, who continues, "Oh, my dear Magneto, you might as well fight your own shadow." And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of the issue. Man, y'all, what are we thinking about this Resurrection of Magneto run so far? Did you expect to see the Shadow King? I'm excited to see how they get out of this, and I can't wait to get Magneto back into the Fall of the House of X fight. But it was crazy how through all his wallowing, it was thinking about Charles that brought him back and got him right. Don't nobody better say nothing bad about Charles. But I think it's going to be dope once we get Magneto into the main fight. But how do you guys think these guys are going to get away from the Shadow King? This dude is a beast, and I'm sure they're about to go through hell. But you guys get in those comments and share your thoughts. And if you guys enjoyed this video and this channel, and you'd like to support the channel, then you can do so by joining the new Iconic Fan Club channel membership. And there'll be a link in the description to join. But with your membership, you'll gain access to weekly interactive live streams with yours truly in front of the camera, where we could talk about what's been going down in these issues, as well as ones that you'd like for me to go over in the future and other comic book news. Plus, you guys will get loyalty badges, member shoutouts, and more. Or you guys can donate to the channel with a super thanks. And if you're not able to do that, then you can still help the channel out tremendously by dropping a like, share, and subscribing to Comics Icons for more icons in the comic book world. What's up, comic book fans? And welcome to Comics Icons. Now, JJ what they call me. And today, we got more Fall of the House of X with the third issue of Resurrection of Magneto. And this issue does not disappoint because finally, the Master of Magnetism is reborn. Hell hath no fury like Magneto reborn. But will Storm make it out with him? And if you need to get caught up with this series, then I place a card up top to the Resurrection of Magneto playlist, as well as a link at the end of the video. But for everybody else, if you remember, after the last issue, both Magneto and Storm winded up in the dimension of the Shadow King. So if you guys are ready to find out how Magneto makes it back to the land of the living, and if Storm can make it out with him, then you guys know what time it is. Let's get it. So we start this issue with Storm and Magneto still in this dimension inhabited by the Shadow King. But now Storm appears to be alone as she's approached by the face of Annihilation, asking Storm if she'd honestly thought that they were done. Now, Annihilation had recently been defeated by Storm back during the Genesis War, and Storm asked this face where did it take Magneto? But all the mask says is far away. This face really wants to know if Storm truly thought the battle between them was over, to which Storm did in fact believe so. But Annihilation informed Storm that all she did was cut him off from physical space. To end him is much more difficult. But Storm is not easily tricked, and she knows that when she first arrived in this place, she was met by the Shadow King. And it's likely the Shadow King now that possesses this face of Annihilation. And of course, Storm is correct in her assumption that this is still the Shadow King before her, as the Shadow King then gives Storm something to think about as he asks her if Annihilation was truly a mask, or is the Shadow King the face of Annihilation. Then he tells Storm that perhaps she's thinking too small. Perhaps we are a legion, each with our own name and role, yet each aligned. Perhaps you've battled us many times in borrowed guises. Perhaps you battle us every day of your life, and on into the future, in endless war. And then he asks Storm once again, are we done? And Storm now acknowledges that they are never done. And now Storm goes on the offensive with this entire Shadow King Legion. Meanwhile, we see that the Shadow King also taunts Magneto at the same time using the face of Charles Xavier, as he and Magneto now overlook the battle between Storm and the Legion like a game of chess. But Magneto isn't too thrilled with the Shadow King using Charles to speak his words. But the Shadow King questions Magneto, asking him if he's sure that with all he's learned, that there is no shadow in Charles Xavier? Do you really believe that, Eric? He's a good man, Magneto replies to the Shadow King. And then we see as the Shadow King eventually uses all of the past forms of Xavier to continue taunting Magneto with his former name of Eric Lyncher. We see Charles's regular wheelchair to the classic hover chair that Xavier used to use. But the Shadow King reminds Magneto that when he and Charles met, it was as Eric Lyncher. So of course, that's how Charles thinks of him. But by now going by the name of Max. This is Magneto's attempt to finally drop all of his masks. But there's still one mask that remains, Shadow King reminds him. That no matter how much he'd like to be Max, what's the name in your heart? And Max responds that it is Magneto. And now the Shadow King reveals himself in the form of Magneto, now towering over Max and speaking as if he were truly the master of magnetism. The human race no longer deserves dominion over planet Earth. The day of the mutants is upon us. And the first phase of my plan will be to show my power, to make Homo sapiens bow to Homo superior. As we then transition back to Storm and her fight. And we can see now that this fight is more than what it looks like. This is a fight with how she is to be perceived. The Omega's Omega, the goddess on her throne, never failing, never permitted to fail. Am I to be allowed no flaw, she ponders. Just before she then rejects these feelings, she will not be caged, not by the hand of this demon nor anyone else. But just as she rejects one cage, she's hit with another as the mask of annihilation now covers Storm's face and forces her to listen to its words. You wouldn't listen to your own reality, but now you're in my house. Now it's just you and me, and it's my turn to speak. And now this mask just continues to taunt Storm, telling her that she's addicted to responsibility, and as she fights to remove this mask from her face, upon its removal, she's now met with the face of Charles Xavier. But Storm knows this is yet another trick by the Shadow King as he continues his taunting over her. Then we take a look at Magneto and his trials, looking into the eyes of his own radical version of his past self, screaming back at him, demanding to rule the earth. Magneto has had enough. He's aware of his past ill-considered words, as he now seems to take a more Zen-like approach and becomes unbothered by the hate-filled Shadow King. Now, this version of Magneto is almost assuming the role of Charles Xavier and speaking with the old Magneto, as he tells the old version of himself that there is still a place for us in the broken land. I do not deny you. I will not ignore you. You are a part of me, perhaps the most foundational part. You are my rage, my justified anger in response to the monstrous crimes against me and mine. Should I forgive those evils? Should I forget? Remember only my daughter's laugh, never her final screams? So I am told. So I am often told. But I cannot forgive. Not even myself. Where does that leave us? Throughout my life, I have repressed the rage in me until it exploded, or I have given it free rein over all decision. But I cannot return to the world and return to the same path. I must change. We must evolve. So I acknowledge all that I have done. I admit all that I am. I own the shadow that is in me. And if this is the engine that drives me, let it drive me to a better world. A world for all who are hated and feared. Then we go back to Storm, and she's hit with an ultimatum from the Shadow King to accept him, acknowledge that he is part of the human heart, and allow him to work in the world, or to reject him and stay in battle. But Storm knows that this is his trap, and this is not a binary decision. She must accept him, acknowledge his part in the tapestry of existence, respect that he is as he is according to his role, so that she could fight him with every drop of her blood. For the shadows in us must be seen in order to be truly beaten. And evil is never fought if someone isn't fighting it. As a now overconfident Shadow King asks Storm if she will be the one to free her people and save the world. You, Aurora Monroe, the goddess who never fails, you alone. But Storm recognizes this trap as well, as if being a part of a team is a weakness. And Storm knows that she's an X-Men, meaning she's never alone. As she reaches out her hand, she's immediately met with Magneto, who joins her at her side instinctively and knows what must now be done. As they've done before on Araco, they bring their powers together, and she feeds her life force to Magneto in a single attack. A perfect mutant circuit. Storm acknowledges that even in this place beyond death, we can give our lives against the great enemy of life. The Shadow King, fearful and furious at the failure of his trick, tries to break the link. But the energies have built too far now, and they are only building further, back and forth, taking more of Storm's life force with every pass. And when the storm breaks, comes the release. The Shadow King screams as we can see the combined powers of Magneto and Storm released at the Shadow King defeated him. But Storm's life force is now drained. And now it's almost the reverse of when Storm held the dying Magneto back on Araco. As she softly asks Magneto if it's done. Magneto begs for Storm to stay with him. But Storm knows that this mission was always going to cost a huge price. And with her dwindling energy, she tells Magneto that she came here alive. And that was their weapon, her life. But you, Magneto, still have a way back. Turn your key again. Return to the world. Fight for it. But he can't accept life at this cost. Not at the cost of one more innocent life, human or mutant. Not one more. Not while I have the power to say no. And as Storm tries to tell Magneto that this is out of their hands, he refuses that sentiment. Nothing is out of our hands, he screams. And Storm thinks to herself that his anger overflows like the Magneto who was, channeled like molten iron into new paths, into the Magneto who will be. As Magneto refuses to let Storm go, he tells her that if he can draw on her life, then she can draw on his. I give it freely, he adds. I have the power. I am power. Take it and call it forth. As she now acknowledges that she can once again feel pain, endless pain. It hurts to live. It hurts to return to the world, just to be in the world. It could hurt so much. This world of hate and fear, as Magneto calls for her to take his power again, almost as if his powers were like a defibrillator for Storm. As we then are taken back to Adam Brashear and Taia, who we last saw in issue 1 of this series trying to revive Storm, who from their perspective had fallen unconscious after attempting to cross the portal. From their perspective, Storm never left, and they've been trying to revive her ever since. And finally their efforts are successful, as Storm's heart begins to beat again, strong and steady. And as Storm now starts to wake up, Adam Brashear is thankful to have her back with them in the land of the living. But Storm lets Adam know that she actually did it. She accomplished her goal and completed her mission. And she tells Adam to look, as they notice that now someone else is coming through the portal. And when Adam asks who it is that's coming through, Storm knows that he already knows, as the portal gate screams as matter is torn from the energy beyond, spitting flesh, bone and blood. New, and yet somehow the original. Who am I? The mysterious person asks. I am power. Men call me Magneto. As a now fully formed Magneto appears on this side of the portal. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the master of magnetism is officially back amongst the land of the living. And that, my friends, is the end of this issue. Damn, this issue was so good, y'all. I love this series so far, and now I'm super geeked about what happens next with this fight with Orchis. And I'm honestly a little bit torn, as Magneto seems like he's changed as a person from this experience. But at the same time, this Orchis threat needs classic Magneto. But like he told the Shadow King, he is still the dark version of himself with the new light version. So I'm looking forward to seeing this new, more Zen-like Magneto, but I'm hopeful that he still gets down and dirty when he needs be. But what did you guys think of this issue? And how awesome was it that Magneto gave part of his life energy back to Storm? I think that was an amazing representation of how far the relationship between these two has come. I wonder how Charles will react when he sees Magneto once again. But what are you guys thinking about this whole Fall of the House of X event so far? Is it living up to your expectations? Is it giving the Krakoan era the proper ending that it deserves in your opinion? A big shout out to writer Al Ewing for this series and Luciano Vecchio for the artwork. This has been a well-written and stunning visual series, but you guys hit me up in the comments because this is a series worth talking about, I think. And it's kind of fitting that I just watched the first 2 episodes of X-Men 97 while bringing you this video, as the relationship between Magneto and Storm in that series seems like perfect synergy with this one. Well done by Marvel, releasing this issue on the same day as the animated series return. Well done indeed. But as always, if you guys enjoyed this video and this channel, and you'd like to support the channel, then you could do so by joining the Iconic Fan Club channel membership. And there'll be a link in the description to join. But with your membership, you'll gain access to weekly interactive live streams with yours truly in front of the camera, where we can talk about everything that's been going down in these issues, as well as ones that you'd like for me to go over in the future and other comic book news. Plus, you guys will get loyalty badges, member shoutouts, and more in these videos. Or you guys can donate to the channel with a super thanks. And if you're not able to do that, then you can still be a huge help to the channel by dropping a like, share, and subscribing to Comics Icons for more icons in the comic book world.
What's up, comic book fans, and welcome to Comics Icons. Now, JJ what they call me, and today we got more Fall of the House of X with the 4th issue and series finale of Resurrection of Magneto. And this series has been really dope so far, but as the last issue came to an end, we finally got the reveal of Magneto walking back amongst the land of the living. And if you guys are behind and you need to catch up, then I'll place a card at the top of the screen for you right now. And I'll put a link at the end of the video as well to the Resurrection of Magneto playlist. But if you guys are ready to see how Magneto helps turn the tide in this mutant war, then you guys know what time it is. Let's get it. So I don't know about you guys, but I'm hyped to have Magneto back in the fray. He's always been one of my favorite characters in X-Men, and this does not disappoint. So when the issue kicks off, we waste no time in getting straight to the action, as we start with Magneto inside of an Orchis facility. And as he glides through this facility, seemingly without a care in the world, the Orchis agents all open fire on him. Instead, what concerns Magneto right now is which hat he should wear, because each one of these helmets throughout the years represented a different ideology for Magneto. But Storm had filled in Magneto about Krakoa's fall and everything that's happened since, but Magneto insisted in seeing it with his own eyes. So while the Resistance mobilized, Magneto decided to hit up the closest Orchis facility resting on the ocean surface. And one thing to note here is that Magneto isn't killing these guys right now. He's just using his helmets to knock each one of them out. The Orchis agents, on the other hand, they can't believe that they're being raided by Magneto right now, and they quickly call for reinforcements. But Magneto realizes that when he turned his back on the world, this is what it did in his absence. And now Magneto can feel his rage burning, but he holds back. But then he notices that the commander, whom he had just hit in the face with a helmet, this guy has the nerve to not have a broken jaw. So as the commander calls for the Squad Zero to be sent in, Magneto makes a point to fix that lack of a broken jaw, and he smashes this guy with a door. Then he decides to turn the soldiers' weapons against them, since he's starting to get annoyed by the bullets. But again, he doesn't kill them, as he thinks to himself that even among the powerful, he is power, and power carries weight. Power makes ripples in the world. Meanwhile, these guards have their blasters staring them in their faces as they beg to be spared. Magneto continues to think to himself, I help, I harm, I save life, I end it. What should my choice be? What is my responsibility? And then he chooses to once again just knock these guys unconscious with their own weapons. Then he continues to question, which hat should I wear? Which Magneto will I be? And is it truly up to me? He asks, as now this Orchis Squad Zero team teleport in, and now they all have Magneto boxed in with their weapons trained on him. And when the Squad Zero comes in, they are very confident And they tell Magneto that since they're here, this battle is already over. And Magneto acknowledges to himself that he senses strange electromagnetic energies at play around these soldiers and in their very bodies. This must be some weapon against me or against Lorna. And then anger begins to tell Magneto to strike them down before they do the same to him. But instinct tells him to wait and pull his magnetic field in tight. Very tight. As now these guards begin to mock Magneto and they ask him, what's the matter? Don't you want to take these guns away? And now they believe Magneto to be scared. And then one of them fires a shot, but Magneto had already pulled in his magnetic field, so he's able to catch this bullet precisely half an inch from his skull. No more. Now he understands the trap, and he must be careful. Those magnetic fields aren't weapons, but sensors. Their weapon is their cruelty, he thinks. And now the squad continue to taunt Magneto and tease him to strike them down. Then they begin to fill in the rest of the prisoners there that are watching on why Magneto hasn't yet stopped them. That Magneto has already noticed by now that their suits detect changes to local magnetic fields, and they are very sensitive. And if any magnetic powers touch these suits, nerve gas is gonna flood this prison. First 10 of you die, then 100, then 1,000. And now the prisoners begin to get afraid, with the exception of one of them who places his faith in Magneto's return. Then the Squad Zero put their focus back on Magneto and tell him, there's your choice, Mags. Either you die for your adoring fans, executed for crimes against humanity, or you kill them while trying to kill us. Hope you pick the second one. The perfect trap, Magneto thinks to himself. A way to counter me without requiring costly non-magnetic materials. Only callousness, which Orchis have a plentiful supply of. Storm and Blue Marvel are close by, but I can't signal them without triggering the sensors. I must craft my own response. How would the Magneto of old react? With the black helmet? Unthinking rage? Single-minded vengeance at any cost? Even these innocent lives? I'd like to say otherwise, but I find myself uncertain. Then he thinks of his white helmet. What would Charles do? Embrace self-sacrifice? Fall nobly upon the offered sword? Of course, now he knows how Orchis keeps their end of such bargains. Then he thinks of the red helmet. But these are hypotheticals. In the here and now, I only see one way to proceed. My way. Tripping the sensors will send an electrical impulse down a wire to a circuit almost instantaneously. Almost. This move will require confidence and strength, an experienced mind and a vital body. It won't require finesse, but anything that did would be too slow. I'll have to remember their names, he continues to think to himself. Then there is a sudden sound of every metal component inside the suits, every wire, every circuit crushing down into 5 small, dense cores. The process ignores the 5 bodies inside the suits. The sound is wet. Unlike electricity in a wire, mutant power is instantaneous. The thing is done so quickly that no signal escapes, no gas is triggered, and yet, it was the perfect trap, with no way out. As we now see that Magneto was able to basically ball up these Squad Zero dudes inside of their suits before any signal could even be tripped. He shut down everything because his powers operated faster than Orchis' electricity could. And it wasn't even a fight, as now Magneto's mind is made up. Neither the white or the black helmet. He chooses the red one. He did it, the other mutants cheer. Magneto did it. And Magneto acknowledges that it's the hope in their voices that almost break him. He must be so careful with that hope. And he then begins to tear down all their cell doors, freeing all the mutants in this facility. Now I have truly returned to the world, he thinks. Turned to face it, to act in it, and upon it. And already, my actions have taken lives and saved them. To save one life is to save the world, my teacher said. Then he looks on at these mutants, and he continues to think that they look at me with such expectation. Which Magneto am I? Their Magneto. And what do they see? Their hero? The man on the t-shirt? The man who is right? A good man? I will try. Try again. It is all I can do. And yet, I fear it. Then he says to this group of mutants, to me, my friends. Then they all regroup outside. And Storm and Blue Marvel have all done their part. Between them, they've rescued almost 1,000 caged mutants. And the other two took more Orchis prisoners as well. Then Blue Marvel opens up a portal to his headquarters where these mutants can all be sent back to their loved ones, and a detention center for the Orchis prisoners. Is that everyone? Storm asks Magneto. And his response is everyone who survived. Then Blue Marvel lets them know that evacuation has now been completed and all the data from the Orchis systems has been strip mined. So which one of you would like the pleasure? And of course Magneto accepts. It's no effort at all, he thinks. More of a relief as he then destroys this entire facility. But it's not over, as now a Stark Sentinel flies over them. Mutant detected. Engage and destroy, it says. Then Blue Marvel fills in Magneto on what they now face. A Stark Sentinel. The most advanced mutant killer yet. Another job well done, Tony. As Magneto now acknowledges that Dr. Brashear has a long-standing distrust of the Avengers. And that he and I are much alike. But this is not Stark's creation. Orchis stole everything he had, including his name and his darkest thoughts. Then Storm tells him that the Sentinels were built to withstand his magnetic power, but they've yet to face her. Then Magneto thinks to himself that this is lethal technology that Stark invented and kept in reserve, in case he needed it against me. And did I not desire that? Did I not want him to fear me? How many have these machines killed, I wonder? How many dead in my name? Meanwhile, Magneto notices, as Storm is fighting this Sentinel, it deploys countermeasures in the form of a sonic device. Then he acknowledges that it's an ear-splitting, ever-changing cacophony. And Aurora is one of the most powerful mutants alive, but her ears are very much human. But Blue Marvel comes in to Storm's rescue and tells the Sentinel that while it's aiming at Storm, it can't hit him. And he bets that he's not even in this machine's database. But the machine proves that assumption false, and it blasts Blue Marvel with neutronium radiation. Then amongst all the fighting, a bunch of humans arrive on a boat with a sign that reads Mutant Liberation Now. And this Sentinel notices this boat with these people and says aloud, unauthorized humans detected, preparing countermeasures. And Magneto notes that at first glance, these seemed like fishermen blown off course. But then he notices the sign in the cameras. These are activists and citizen journalists. Somehow, they found out about the Orchis facility here and came to expose it. And now these people are recording this fight with their cameras, and they hear the Sentinel and are like countermeasures, and they think that the Sentinel is bluffing because they're humans, and hurting them is against the rules. But we all know that the AI is running the show now, so this Sentinel will have no problem wiping out these people. And Magneto can tell that these people are now in danger, and Blue Marvel tries to get them to stop the engines on the boat so they can evacuate. But Magneto realizes that there's no time for that. This weapon, ostensibly built to protect humans from him, will instead kill them all. And while he could call that irony or poetic justice for human crimes, he cannot turn his back. So he pulls together the remains from the destroyed facility and forms it into two giant fists. And he flies up and he puts the paws on this Sentinel repeatedly. But this does nothing since the Sentinel is designed to withstand such attacks. And when Storm attempts to join in and help Magneto, she's hit with more sonics. But Blue Marvel is able to counter those sonics this time with a subtle antimatter field around Storm, nullifying the effects of the sonics. Then Magneto thinks to himself that human and mutant powers in strategic combination. Charles would call it inspirational. But I think I can take it further. Then he steals some conductive metal from those giant fists and forms what he needs from them. Then he calls Aurora and Adam to his side and tells them that they are going to make a human mutant circuit. An electromagnetic circuit, he tells Brashear. Call it a new spin on an old trick. But Storm warns Magneto that if this goes wrong, it could kill him. But his response to her is, "Haven't you heard? I'm not afraid of a life that ends." So Storm calls down the lightning just as she did in the Shadow Kingdom and on Araco, and uses it to boost Magneto's power. But this time Adam is there to regulate the power and feed it back. So there is no release, only constant redirection through Magneto. The energy flow is unrelenting, he thinks, and the pain is unimaginable, but so is his rage. And he's not able to touch the stencil magnetically, and he cannot peel it open, but what he can do is hit it over and over and over until part of its face falls away. And once the inside of its face is exposed, the three of them then pour on everything they've got into this sentinel until it explodes. Then Magneto thinks to himself that once I set myself apart from the world, on a place above it and above all the people in it. Homo superior, I called myself, and I played judge and jury for human and mutant alike in my clean white cape. And when the world I helped to build was no longer to my liking, too much pain, too many compromises, I chose to wash my hands of it and walk away. I was wrong, and now I must make amends. Let this be a beginning. Then Magneto tells Adam and Aurora that since the defenses are down on the Sentinel, they should try to study it to provide some clue to their weaknesses. And Adam agrees with Magneto on this, but first, he's got to get the people on the boat to safety. But then Storm is hit with a strong telepathic signal. It was relayed to her since Magneto was wearing his helmet, but it's a message from Emma Frost. She says she's glad Magneto is back, but now she needs him to rescue her husband. Then Storm asks Magneto, "You up for saving the man who invented the tech we just fought?" And Magneto responds that now that is ironic, but he won't turn his back. After all, to save one life is to save the world. Let's go. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of this issue and this series. Whew. Magneto is officially all the way back in his game time, y'all. So what did you guys think about this issue and this series? Did you guys enjoy the ride that brought us back to the master of magnetism? The timing of his return couldn't have been better though, since now the machines are running the show. The mutants and the humans could use his help big time. As well as Tony Stark, of course. How about that meeting between those two? And if you happen to catch the video that I just dropped on the Invincible Iron Man issue 17, you got a chance to see that meeting. But I personally thought that this was a really dope series. And I love seeing Magneto come back and try to figure out who he will be this time. Now I'm really looking forward to when he finally meets back up with Charles Xavier though. I wonder how that one will go. But I can't wait to hear you guys' thoughts on this though. And I hope you guys enjoyed this series just as much as I did. And as always, if you guys enjoyed this video and this channel and you'd like to support the channel, then you can do so by joining the Iconic Fan Club channel membership. And there'll be a link in the description to join. But with your membership, you'll gain access to weekly interactive live streams with yours truly, where we could talk about everything that's been going down in these issues, as well as stuff that you'd like for me to go over in the future and other comic book news. Plus, you guys will get loyalty badges, member shout-outs, and more. Or you can donate to the channel with a super thanks. And if you're not able to do either of those, then you can still be a tremendous help to the future of this channel by dropping a like, share, and subscribing to Comics Icons for more icons in the comic book world. But ladies and gentlemen, it's about that time. I'm out. Peace.